All right, guys, we're gonna dive right into this clip here, man. So we got Dave Smith, man. Let's just call it what it is, man. Dave Smith is the front line. He's leading the pack against resisting fake media, and he calls it like it is, guys. And that's why people don't like the guy. That's why they tried to get on him for destroying Douglas Murray, embarrassing him on the Rogan TV on the Rogan channel. Let's get into this clip here. So he addresses this whole, because they try to weaponize anti-Semitism a lot, and it looks like they're going to pass some type of bill and start deporting actual Americans for this stuff. So let's get into this clip where he addresses this with the Lex Friedman show. Let's get into
there
it, man.
does seem to be a lot of hatred of Jews on X.
Yeah.
How much of it do you think is actual hate of Jews, and how much of it is just trolls and grifters and conspiracy nerds just, cosplaying as Nazis?
It's really hard to tell. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you even figure it out. And I think this is one of the problems with outrage culture. It's kind of one of the unintended consequences of it, is that now you just have no way of knowing who's saying this just to get a rise out of you, or who really sincerely means it, or who's some version of both. Then there's also, there's so many weird dynamics, because there's no question, I see it all the time. I mean, I see a level of Jew hatred on Twitter that I've never seen before in my own replies and other people's things. And that's interesting. First off, you're okay, so what's going on here?
Interesting sociological phenomena, yeah.
Right, concerning and troubling and all of that stuff. But then you also see people who will be asking completely legitimate questions or making completely legitimate points that are called anti-Semitic. And then that, I think, does not help the dynamic at all, because now you're almost there's... Number one, you just you make the word meaningless. You take away the disincentive for anybody else to actually be a Jew hater. I think there's a lot going on. One of the things is that for young white men in America today, they've lived through the years of real insane progressive wokeism. And so, which is something I'm 42. It's just a different thing for me. I come from a different culture and a different time. That is just simply was not the case that when I was a teenager, or when I was in college, or when I was in my early 20s, that the school, the faculty, the politicians, Hollywood, all of them embraced racialism. They all said we're playing identity politics, and it is okay to dice people up along these racial lines and have that first and foremost in your mind, And there is this weird feeling over this last year, and now with Trump being reelected, that we snapped our fingers and wokeism went away or something like that. But these guys still came up in this era, and it was always the case that one of the dangerous elements of playing this game was well, you think you're going to play this, and that young straight white men aren't going to start playing this game too? Why the hell would they not? Why would they just accept, we'll just sit here while everybody else is allowed to have a racial identity and a grievance about it, and yet we'll be the one group who, you could just stomp all over us. We're the bad guys. And that's part of the reason why I always opposed the woke insanity. First and foremost, just because I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong to be shitty to people based on their racial group, and that includes white people too. But then also you're you don't see that this is gonna result in something bad. So there's that. But I clearly, and it was weird to me is that I guess it's because a lot of the people who are the most upset about the anti-Semitism also happen to be supporting Israel. There's a big correlation between that. But clearly, it's a huge factor in this. It's not a coincidence that all of this rose up while Israel is just conducting this brutal campaign with our weapons and money. And so I always think with these things, whether it's with Putin or with Al-Qaeda or with whoever, and I'm not saying the guy who posts Jew hating stuff on Twitter is the same as them. I'm just saying in all of these situations, you always kind of got to separate what are legitimate grievances and what are like, okay, that's, you're wrong on that and you shouldn't be doing that, you know, like, so it's pretty easy for me to, like, if I listen to like the Putin interview with Tucker, I thought his whole 30-minute opening thing was like horrible and just like kind of stupid, especially when you're talking to Tucker Carlson. You know, this is like for an American audience. You know how much that does not resonate with Americans being like, we have a historic claim over another our entire society is founded on, we think that's bullshit. Like, that's the entire history of our, is like, nah, it doesn't matter. Sorry. Like, literally read the Declaration of Independence. It just refutes everything Vladimir Putin said in the first 30 minutes. Like, our view of the world is that God wants us to be free. And we get to overthrow governments if they're infringing on our rights. Like, that's, so that was stupid. But then when he's talking about like NATO enlargement and bringing Ukraine into the American military alliance, you're like, okay, he's got a legitimate point there. We would not allow one of our neighbors to be brought into China or Russia's military alliance. And so likewise, when it comes to those guys, I do think that, like, you almost, look, it is just true. It is the case that America has fought many wars over the last 7 years, with Israel playing a very influential role in us fighting those wars. And, you know, these were, this was like a scheme that was cooked up by the neoconservatives and the Likudniks in Israel, that we would go through this path. But this has been confirmed by 4-star General Wesley Clark. He literally said it was a study paid for by the Israelis, that we were going to topple 7 countries in 5 years. And we didn't get there in 5 years, but we've made attempts to topple all of those countries since then. You know, you see Trump's bombing the Houthis because they're pissed off about Israel's treatment of the Palestinians, and so they're trying to shut down their straits or whatever. And it's like, so we're just bombing another group on behalf of Israel. And if you really are concerned about the rise of Jew hatred, I would say, like, look, it's much like, you know, sometimes people would argue where, you know, the thing I said in the beginning about the terrorists don't hate us for our freedom, they hate us because we're over there. And people would say, that's just what Osama bin Laden says. He just says he hates us for our military, but he really just hates us because he's an Islamist and we're free people or whatever. And you'd be like, okay, well, even if that's what's in his heart, that sure is his recruiting shtick. That sure is how he gets other people to blow themselves up. And so even if you want to say, which might very well be the case, that some of these people just hate Jews, and it wouldn't matter if Israel was at war with Gaza or not. It's like, okay, but that sure is their recruiting shtick. That sure is how they get other people to go look at what these Jews are doing in our foreign policy. So I don't know. There's a lot going on. I do think, I think racialism of all different forms is stupid and wrong. It always just leads to sloppy thinking and bad results. It's always kind of ugly. And then weirdly, it also always ends up hurting the person. Like, it's not good for you. It's not good for your soul. So I don't like seeing that stuff. But then I also think, you know, like I was saying before about, there's like this hierarchy of outrages that you got to have in order to think and act. You have to kind of put these together. And, you know, I just hear a little bit, it's something that you know, despite being described as a self-hating Jew, I am really not. I love Jewish people. I love Jewish culture. I've benefited a lot from it. It's in many ways made me the person I am. And I think I think it's influenced some of the best parts of me. But there is like a whininess and a hysteria about this stuff that I think is just like not healthy. I think it's not good. I've told many Jewish friends and family this privately, but it's like, the way I look at it is like, I'm an American. This has been a wonderful country to be Jewish. Jews are doing exceptionally well in this country. We are 2% of the population or so, and we are thriving by any metric. And if mean stuff on Twitter is our great burden to bear, I don't think we should be talking about it like we're in the middle of Nazi Germany or something like that. So I do think people get hysterical about it.
In a way that's completely not productive. But to me, I think of the Jew-hating nerds and trolls on Twitter as just the other side of the woke leftist.
I kind of get that, yeah.
It's almost like a response, like you were saying. It's just that the woke weren't censored, and the response to the woke was censored. And now that on X, they're less censored or not censored, you just get to see it. And they're both annoying.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They don't really help the discussion on Israel. They don't help the discussion on anything. In fact, one of the reasons I stay away from that discussion of Israel, which I think is nuanced and really complicated in the way that we've been discussing. In order to have an intellectual like exploration of ideas, you have to be able to misstep and try ideas
Yeah,
for
yeah.
size. And if I'm going to be punished severely by these, I'm okay being criticized, when there's like low brain takes that are just lying about me en masse, like you get a huge amount of engagement just because you're like thinking out loud and reading history, and it's
Yeah.
just annoying. And by the way, I'm really interested about World War II, probably in the way that Dan Carlin and Daryl Cooper are interested, because it's such an interesting stage on which human nature was explored in all its forms, the geopolitics of it. Everybody on that stage was complicated. There's a lot of fascinating military tactics and strategy and military technology.
All right, guys, man. So that was their take on it, man. Like, let's be real, man. Anybody who's legit, genuinely anti-Semitic or hates Jewish people is absolutely stupid, man. Does not understand the dynamics of any of these conflicts or what's really, because a lot of people want to revert back to, AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you got to separate Israel, the Jews, and Zionists. Completely different things, guys. Okay, the Jewish religion and Jewish people have nothing to do with the ultra right wing Zionist baby murderers that are controlling Israel right now, right? And there's even some Israelis who are moderate who don't agree with this type of stuff, right? So the anti-Semitic, weird shit like the Nick Fuentes and these type of individuals and Kanye and all that, they're corny as hell. And usually when you start to actually follow what they're trying to say, what message they're trying to put out, they don't have a really solid grasp of what's going on geopolitically or how the Jews are related in some way, fashion or form to whatever misery they're going through. How could you blame a group of people who are 2% of the population come in and sweep house, clean house, like they run shit, and you gotta admire that, right? But the Israeli Zionist baby killers, we call those people out, guys, right? So those are the people that you want to target, the Zionists, right? Uh, but yeah, X is just it's getting too much, man, with this stuff. Anyways, man, let me know what you guys think in the comment sections down below. Make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe.